All right, dealing more with acceptance of a contract, crucial aspect. It's once we form a contract, once we understand there's an offer, once we accept it, that is once everything starts kicking in. We have obligations, remedies, all that good stuff. Here, acceptance is going to signifies the offeree's agreement to the offer's terms and conditions. Following points are going to be essential when we're dealing with acceptance in contract law. First off, offers are not assignable unless there is an option contract. Now, generally, offers cannot be assigned or transferred to another party without the offerer's consent. However, if there is an option contract, the offeree may have the right to assign the offer to another party. Generally, it's between two parties, and you can't just introduce a third party and say, this person wants the contract now. Nope. But if there's an option contract, that is an exception. If the offer states the specific method for acceptance, that method must be used. Otherwise, there could be a counteroffer. Classic comical example. I love the show Nathan For You, and it's as a running joke. He has a money back guarantee if you can climb to the top of a mountain and find the mailbox and get a reimbursement if you put your form in the mailbox. And obviously, that's a little ridiculous, climbing up an entire mountain just to get $10 back for a rebate on gas. But that's just what comes to mind. Just funny with that. If the offer specifies a particular method for acceptance, the offeree must use that method to accept the offer. If the offeree uses a different method, it may be considered a counteroffer rather than acceptance, which could result in the termination of the original offer. Now, obviously, having someone climb to the top of the mountain and find a mailbox, that is a little extreme and would probably be dismissed in a court of law as ridiculous, but that's a TV show. However, something as simple as you must accept the offer via email or letter, that is valid. That's totally normal. It's up to the person making the offer. Maybe they don't have computers, so they need to accept it via mail. That's totally up to them and how they do it. Real estate, insurance, services, and employment contracts. We've got the mirror image rule. Change in terms is a counteroffer. Under the mirror image rule, the offeree's acceptance must exactly match the terms of the offer, which, again, that makes sense. They're the ones making the offer. They are in control of how the contract will play out. Any change or deviation in terms will actually constitute a counteroffer rather than acceptance, which terminates the original offer. Remember, you can't really change this once it's been stated. It's got to be redone. Generally effective when sent, not when received. In many jurisdictions, generally how we're going to see this here, acceptance of an offer is effective when sent or communicated, not when received by the offerer. This is known as the mailbox rule, and we'll talk about that much more later as well. However, the offerer may opt out of the mailbox rule by specifying in the offer that acceptance is effective only when received. And lastly, can opt out but must state that in the offer. As mentioned above, the offerer can choose to opt out of the mailbox rule by stating explicitly in the offer that acceptance is effective only when received. This requirement provides clarity to the offeree and ensures that both parties understand the terms of the contract. Not too bad, nothing too crazy. You got this. All right, as promised, the mailbox rule. Let's dive through what this is if you were to see it on the exam. The mailbox rule, also known as the deposited acceptance rule, but mailbox rule sounds a lot more fun. It's a legal principle that states that an acceptance of an offer becomes effective when it's dispatched or sent by the offeree rather than when it's received by the offerer. Think of FOB shipping point destination, just those concepts in accounting. Kind of similar to that. This is a rule dictating when title transfers or when acceptance is valid. The mailbox rule applies to contracts formed through postal mail or other forms of direct communication, such as email or fax. I don't know if anyone's faxing anymore these days, but I'd say email for sure. However, the rule does not apply to instant communication methods, such as phone calls or face-to-face conversations. So someone may not read a text message right away, an email right away, but if you say it to their face, then, that's right away. An example being on January 1st, Alice sends a letter to Bob offering to sell her bicycle for $200. Bob receives the letter on January 3rd and immediately sends a letter accepting the offer. On January 4th, before receiving Bob's acceptance, Alice changes her mind and sends a letter to Bob revoking the offer. Bob's letter of acceptance is received by Alice on January 5th, and the revocation letter is received by Bob on January 6th. In this case, the mailbox rule will apply. Bob's acceptance becomes effective when he dispatched the letter on January 3rd, before Alice's revocation was sent on January 4th. In this case, even though Alice wanted to revoke it, wanted to go back and say, I'm good, I don't want to enter into this contract, the valid contract was formed, and Alice has to go ahead with selling the bike. Now, obviously, she could say, hey, Bob, I really don't want to. It was given to me by my grandma. I don't want to sell it. And that's up to them to deal with that later on. But all these dates obviously seems incredibly overwhelming, and it can be, and that's their goal in the exam, is to mess you up with all these different dates. Keep track of it, remember your rules, and you'll be able to answer these questions effectively. Let's see another example here dealing with acceptance and the mailbox rule. And on January 1st, Alice sends an email to Bob offering to sell her bicycle for $200. We see it's an email, so we deal with the mailbox rule. The email states that acceptance must be received by Alice to be effective, so she's kind of covering her bases here. Bob sends an email accepting the offer on January 3rd. However, due to a technical issue, Alice receives the email on January 6th. On January 4th, Alice sends an email to Bob revoking the offer. Now, in this case, the mailbox rule does not apply because the offer explicitly stated that acceptance must be received by Alice to be effective. Alice's revocation was sent on January 4th and received by Bob before the acceptance email was received by Alice on January 6th. Therefore, the offer was terminated and no contract was formed. Change one thing. How does that affect the question? There we see. Remember that the mailbox rule applies only to acceptances, not revocations, rejections, or counteroffers, which are all effective upon receipt. Additionally, the offeror can avoid the mailbox rule by explicitly stating in the offer that acceptance must be received in order to be effective. Simple ways to change it up, whether it's in real life, save yourself some headaches, or on the exam, gonna get tripped up by the exam makers. Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.